They fired me on a Wednesday. In a beige room with flickering LED lights and the smell of burnt coffee lingering like a bad decision. The new boss, Jordan, freshly imported from some management consultancy with a jawline shaped by arrogance, looked at me and said, "I'm not going to spend another dime on an incompetent employee." He didn't flinch, didn't even blink, just slid the termination letter across the table with the smug precision of a man who'd never been punched in the face by reality. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I just smiled. Because 3 years ago, when I sold my startup, I wrote a clause into the acquisition agreement. A very specific clause. If I were ever terminated without cause, I had the right to buy the company back for the original sale price. $1. And Jordan? Jordan had no idea. But if we're being honest, and I think we should be at this point, this story doesn't begin with Jordan. It begins with a burned-out laptop in a fourth-floor walk-up in Seattle 7 years ago. No elevator, no insulation. Just me, a dream, and a UX prototype held together by duct tape, caffeine, and late-night tears. Back then, I didn't even call it a startup. It was just the thing I'm working on. A data platform that helped small businesses predict churn by analyzing customer behavior in real time. Not flashy, not sexy. But damn, it worked. I remember the exact moment I knew I had something. A florist down the street messaged me to say the tool warned her about a drop-off in engagement. She called a few customers, sent handwritten notes. Her monthly revenue went up 17% the next quarter. She cried. I cried. It was stupid, beautiful, and more real than anything I'd ever built. Soon the thing I was working on had a name, a logo, a registered trademark, and a team of 5 crammed into my living room, working off folding tables from IKEA. We called ourselves Pulse, because we helped small businesses feel the heartbeat of their customers. It was chaos. Beautiful chaos. We didn't sleep. We built. We failed. We patched things at 3 a.m. and then danced around my kitchen when the dashboards finally stopped crashing. 16 months later, we got our first investment offer. Then came a second. Then a third. But I didn't want the whole VC circus. What I needed was infrastructure. Servers, support, real people who knew how to scale. That's when a mid-sized analytics firm stepped in. They promised stability, resources, a future. "We want to scale your vision, not steal it," the CEO told me over rooftop drinks, while a violinist played something pretentious in the background. I was cautious. I'd seen too many founders get squeezed out of their own creations. So I hired a lawyer, Carmen. Fierce, no nonsense, the kind of woman who could read a contract like a battlefield map. Together, we built in protections, equity, decision-making power, and one clause that was my insurance policy. If I'm terminated without cause, I can repurchase Pulse for the original sale price. I remember Carmen raising an eyebrow. "You really think they'll go for this?" "They won't even notice it," I said. "It's hidden between indemnity terms and boilerplate language." They didn't. And for a while, I didn't need it. The first year post-acquisition was actually good. They let me run product. My team expanded. Pulse's user base tripled. I finally started sleeping more than 4 hours a night. It wasn't my living room anymore, but it still felt like mine. Until Jordan showed up. New management, new vision, new buzzwords. He walked in like he'd been sent to save us from ourselves. Started changing things that didn't need changing. Fired 2 of my original engineers for being culturally misaligned, which apparently meant they didn't fake laugh at his jokes. He held meetings about synergy and alignment and value-forward solutions, and I started to feel like a stranger in my own company. Then came the budget cuts. He slashed R&D, axed our customer feedback team, changed the product name from Pulse to Core Sense, which sounded less like a tech solution and more like a multivitamin. And still, I said nothing. Just took notes, waited, watched, until that Wednesday. The day he fired me for being misaligned with the company's new strategic direction. The same day, I walked out with nothing but a laptop sleeve and a half-used notebook. And a plan. That night, I called Carmen. No words, just two numbers. 14C. She exhaled. Still valid? Still valid. She didn't ask anything else, just said, I'll draft the notice and prepare the check. A single dollar. They took my name off the website, cut my access, scrubbed my legacy like I'd never existed. And while they were busy planning their next rebrand and congratulating themselves on eliminating inefficiencies, my lawyer was preparing the paperwork that would blow the hinges off their empire. Because the thing about fine print? It doesn't matter. Until it does. They replaced me by Monday. Didn't even wait for my badge to deactivate before they posted the job listing. Head of Product Innovation. Urgently hiring. As if ripping out the brain of a system didn't require any recovery time. But I wasn't watching them from a distance. I was watching them from the shadows. You learn a lot when people think you've disappeared. For one, I learned that Jordan, my replacement, had pitched the board on a post-founder growth model, which is a shiny phrase that means, get rid of the people who care too much. They're expensive. I also learned that they'd quietly cut employee development stipends and were now outsourcing QA to a firm known for, let's say, generous bug thresholds. The cracks weren't forming. They were already there. Carmen and I met that Tuesday in a quiet corner booth of an overpriced cafe. She wore her usual all-black zero flare, except a silver pin shaped like a dagger. She ordered tea. I ordered clarity. She slid a folder across the table. Inside, a copy of the original contract, the drafted buyback notice, and a check. $1, blue ink. Signed by me. I stared at it longer than I should have. Because this wasn't just business. This was Pulse. This was my nights, my weekends, my birthday spent fixing back-end crashes with one hand and eating boxed cake with the other. This was every sacrifice I made while others were living lives I could only scroll past on Instagram. This will hit hard, Carmen said quietly. They won't believe it's real. At first. I nodded. Let them laugh. Let them delay. I just want the clock ticking. See, here's the thing about Section 14, C. They had 30 days to respond. 30. That was the timer. If they ignored it, I could take it to arbitration. If they rejected it, I could sue. But if they accepted it, even reluctantly, then Pulse would return to the hands of the woman who wrote its DNA into every line of code. And they wouldn't even see it coming. By Friday, I heard from Aisha, one of the last remaining product engineers from the early days. She texted, everything's falling apart. They're using slides from your old pitch deck like they're new ideas. Feels wrong. Just letting you know. She didn't know about the clause yet. Nobody did. But cracks like that? They matter. People feel when the soul of a company is gone. They feel it in the coldness of all-hands meetings. In the way new leadership dodges real questions. In the hallway silences that used to be laughter. They feel it in the emails that say realignment instead of layoffs. And inside Pulse, the soul had already left the building. By week 2, Carmen had sent the notice. FedEx. Certified. Time-stamped. A letter so short it felt disrespectful to the chaos it would unleash. Per Section 14C of the original purchase agreement, I hereby exercise my right to repurchase the entity known as Pulse Analytics at the original sale price. Please find enclosed payment in full. No emotion, no threats, just legal gravity. The kind of thing that makes a junior associate choke on their lunch when they open it. I imagined the moment it hit Jordan's desk. The confusion, the scoff, the she's bluffing. I didn't need to be there to know the script. It's the same one men like Jordan always follow. They dismiss. They delay. They deny. Until suddenly they're out of options and wondering how it all slipped through their fingers. By week 3, the silence turned heavy. No response. No formal reply from the company. But the whispers began. 2 clients reached out. Not directly, of course. Too risky. But through mutuals. The message was clear. If she's doing something new, let us know. We only stuck around because she was still involved. One of those clients was worth 6 figures a quarter. The other ran their entire infrastructure on our platform. I didn't respond. Not yet. Let the tension rise. Let the storm build quietly. On a rainy Thursday afternoon, Carmen called me. They finally forwarded the notice to legal, and their general counsel, Marjorie Green, has questions. Like? Like if the clause is real, if it's enforceable, if it's a typo. I laughed. Tell her it's not just real, it's permanent ink. Carmen chuckled. I already did. She's not happy. Good. That was the first drop of blood in the water. Because the thing about betrayal isn't just that they fired me. It's that they thought they were smart enough to get away with it. They thought I was sentimental, emotional, software. They forgot I was strategic. And I played the long game. The kind where $1, placed correctly, could become a wrecking ball. The kind where a legally binding clause could become a guillotine. They buried me with a calendar invite. Now I was digging them up with a pen. It started with a meeting. An emergency all-hands called on a Monday at 8:30 a.m., a time intentionally chosen to make people sweat. Organizational Resilience Strategy Session, the calendar invite read. Translation, we're spiraling and we're trying to make it sound like leadership has a plan. Inside the glass-paneled war room, Jordan was pacing. I wasn't there, of course, but word gets out. One thing tech bros always underestimate? The loyalty of engineers. Aisha had her phone in her lap, sending me live updates like a war correspondent. 8:36 a.m. Jordan's wearing a Patagonia vest. That's never a good sign. 8:42 a.m. He just said we're evolving into a more agile organism. 8:44 a.m. Marjorie is glaring at him like she'd rather be hit by a Tesla. Apparently, someone finally read the clause. And not just skimmed it, but understood it. The implications. The language. The brutal precision of Section 14C, I could picture it perfectly. The blood draining from Jordan's face as he processed that they'd accepted a deal with a silent tripwire, one that I had just activated with a $1 check. He probably laughed at first. Or tried to. They always do. Until the legal department explained it in slow, terrifying detail. Yes, the clause is valid. No, there's no expiration. Yes, she's within the 30-day window. No, we never completed a full legal merger. Yes, the entity still exists under her name. The moment they realized Pulse wasn't actually absorbed, it was just leased. That's when the panic began. The next morning, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I let it ring twice before answering. Hello? Hi, Laura. This is Marjorie Green, General Counsel for CoreSense. I'd like to discuss the letter you sent. Straight to the point. No small talk. I respect that. I'm listening, I said. I want to clarify that while your clause appears facially legitimate, we believe the intent of the agreement may not align with your interpretation. I smiled into the phone. Marjorie, are you trying to say the contract feels wrong? A pause. No, I'm saying this would be highly disruptive. Disruption is innovation's twin. I'm sure Jordan has that quote framed in his office. She didn't laugh. Instead, she sighed. Look, there are a lot of moving parts here. We're open to a discussion. I'm not, I said. I've already paid. And with that, I ended the call. Power isn't loud. It's quiet. It's confident. It's knowing the exact leverage point and applying just enough pressure to make the structure buckle. And buckle it did. By the end of that week, 3 senior engineers walked out. No exit interviews, no farewell bagels, just cardboard boxes and middle fingers. One of them left a sticky note on his monitor that read, "We built Pulse to serve people, not marketing jargon. Good luck syncing your synergy." That one ended up on Twitter. 10,000 likes in a day. One investor retweeted it with the caption, "We need to talk about what happened to Pulse. I don't like what I'm hearing." Meanwhile, inside the company, Jordan tried to play it cool. Sent out an all-staff memo about navigating turbulence and remembering our core values. I got a copy forwarded to me by 3 people. Core values. They forgot the core of the company wasn't in their metrics. It was in the people who built it. By Saturday, Pulse's biggest client froze their next round of funding. Official reason, internal vendor review. Unofficial reason, they knew I was coming back. That's when the board finally stepped in. Not because they cared about me, but because now it was about money. Jordan was summoned to a private meeting on Sunday. 9 a.m. sharp. No assistants, no cover story. Just the people who write the checks asking one simple question. Did you know she could do this? And Jordan, confident, cocky, never read a footnote Jordan, had to admit he didn't. They fired him the next morning. No farewell speech, no email blast, just silence. Aisha messaged me one word: decapitated. But this wasn't about vengeance. Not really. This was about restoration. Pulse had become unrecognizable, a ghost of its former self, parading around in pastel rebrands and bloated vision decks. And now, piece by piece, I was reclaiming it. Not with rage, but with precision. They thought I was gone, that I'd cry, move on, start over. But I was never starting over. I was starting again, from exactly where I left off. By the end of the week, Carmen had sent over the final documents to the board. Clear, elegant, legally airtight. I was exercising my right. And the funny thing is, they still had one more chance to stop me. One more window to negotiate. Delay. Fight. But they didn't, because now they were afraid of what I'd do if they pushed back. And that was the moment I knew I had won. The envelope arrived on a Monday, 9:12 a.m. Stamped, signed, delivered. It was hand-carried to the board's interim chair by a courier in a navy blazer who didn't smile. Inside, $1, a legal declaration of asset repurchase, and a clause that had just grown teeth. By noon, the whispers turned to roars. Emails flew. Slack threads exploded. A crisis meeting was called. Emergency Zoom invites went out with subject lines like urgent, clause 14, see action item. And somewhere inside the fourth floor executive wing, surrounded by soundproof walls and desperation, someone finally said it out loud. She owns it. She owns Pulse again. But I wasn't celebrating. Not yet. I was pacing a quiet office 3 blocks away, furnished with 2 desks, 1 espresso machine, and a single framed photo of the original Pulse team, standing shoulder to shoulder in a kitchen that smelled like burnt toast and soldered wires. Carmen sat at the desk across from me, typing with one hand, sipping tea with the other. Her calm annoyed me, in a good way. They'll try to stall, she said. Probably say there's ambiguity. There's not, I said. They'll try anyway. I nodded. Let them. Power doesn't need to scream. It waits. It watches. It prepares. They had made their mistake. And I had made my move. By Tuesday, the Pulse website started glitching. Old files reappeared. My founder's profile photo resurfaced for a few minutes before being yanked down again. A remnant of a forgotten internal database pinged out an automated newsletter with my name in the signature. It was like the company itself was trying to remember me. Or warn them. Jordan was gone. The board had gone quiet. And inside the company, something new was taking root. Or maybe something old was waking back up. Sam texted me at 11:04 a.m. Sam, the last intern I ever hired. Bright-eyed, code-brained, always spilled his lunch on something vital. His message was simple. They're unprepared. People are talking. It feels like the lights are coming back on. I didn't reply right away. Instead, I opened the folder Carmen had prepared. Inside, the finalized transfer of controlling shares. My name. My company. Again. At 3 p.m., I walked past the Pulse building. Not to gloat. Not to peacock. I wore jeans, a black hoodie, and sunglasses. Blended in with the crowd, carrying a tote bag and a secret. I stopped at the cafe next door and ordered a coffee. That's when I saw it. Through the glass. The executive team pacing inside a conference room, visibly arguing. Vanessa, the new head of culture and brand identity, the one who once replaced user feedback reports with emotional vibe mapping, was pointing at a whiteboard with desperation in her eyes. I didn't have to hear her to know what she was saying. We lost control. What do we do? You don't do anything, Vanessa. You did this. You underestimated a woman who built your entire platform using a laptop with a cracked screen and a belief stronger than your marketing buzzwords. And now? Now you're just watching the consequence arrive. By Thursday, the headlines started dropping. Founder reclaims tech startup with $1 clause, a masterclass in fine print power moves. The return of Pulse, how a dismissed founder took back her company overnight. The dollar that sank a CEO. My inbox started flooding. Old clients, former engineers, journalists, podcasters. Even 2 angel investors who'd passed on Pulse in the early days wrote awkward apologies wrapped in offers. But the only message that made me pause came from Julian, our former head of UX. He had been quiet for over a year. Left the company the week Jordan introduced a minimalist data flow model that stripped his team of everything useful. His email read, "I don't know what you're building now, but if there's a seat, I'll stand until there is." That was the moment I let myself breathe. Not because I'd won, but because something worth building was ready to be rebuilt. Friday morning, I walked into our new office space. 4th floor, clean, bright, unbranded, no motivational posters, just one wall painted white, waiting for a new roadmap. Sam was already there. So was Aisha. Carmen brought donuts. I brought something else. A frame. Inside it, the check. $1, slightly creased. Blue ink, bold stroke. I hung it on the wall. Not as a trophy, as a warning. Read the contract. At 2:47 p.m., the final confirmation came through. Ownership transferred. Assets reassigned. Infrastructure unlocked. Pulse was mine again. No handshakes, no parades. Just a digital signature, a system reboot, and a server that purred like it had been holding its breath for years. They thought firing me would erase me. They forgot I built the source code. They replaced me in a boardroom. But I came back through the clause they never read. And now? Now I wasn't just back. I was building something sharper, smarter, louder, something with fire in its wiring and memory in its walls. The relaunch wasn't glamorous, no neon lights, no hype video, no champagne fountains or TED-style spotlight moments. Just 10 of us in folding chairs around a whiteboard with the words, Pulse 2.0, written in red marker. Julian brought bagels. Sam had a busted projector. Carmen brewed the coffee herself. It was a war room, not a launch party. And that's exactly how we wanted it. Because this wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about resurrection. We didn't start with strategy decks or market forecasts. We started with a question. What made Pulse matter? Not the tech, not the UI, not the pitch. It was trust. It was knowing that someone on the other side of the dashboard actually cared whether your business lived or died, whether your customers stayed, whether you could pay rent this month. It was personal. Somewhere along the way, Pulse had lost that. And now we were going to bring it back. One painful, beautiful sprint at a time. The first 2 weeks were brutal. Old code had to be rewritten. Licenses repurchased. Servers reconfigured. Our cloud environment was a mess of outdated credentials and broken pipelines. Vanessa's team had renamed every key file with euphemisms like Synergy Map Final V4. Use this one. And it took Julian 3 full days just to untangle their nonsense. But no one complained. Not once. We were too busy. Too wired in. Too hungry. The kind of hunger that only comes after they tell you you're done. I made a rule. No suits, no buzzwords, no hierarchy. If you had an idea, pitch it. If you saw a problem, fix it. I wasn't interested in status meetings or branded t-shirts. We printed one thing. One sign taped to the inside of our front door. Earn it again. And slowly we did. By month's end, the first clients returned. quietly at first. Private emails, polite check-ins. Then came the referrals. Then came the public declarations. Joya, our first enterprise client, posted a photo of our new dashboard with the caption, "Feels like coming home." It went viral. Investors noticed. Competitors noticed. The old Pulse board definitely noticed. Even Brent, the executive who once mocked me for emotional attachment, posted a LinkedIn article titled, "Why Founders Matter More Than Ever." He blocked me the same day. Meanwhile, the Pulse brand that CoreSense tried to keep running? It withered. You can't fake soul. You can't scale care from a spreadsheet. And you can't replace a founder with someone who doesn't understand the why behind the code. The media storm came next. First a blog post, then a podcast episode, then an op-ed. She got fired. Then she took back her company for $1. A clause, a check, and a quiet revolution. Laura Winters and the legal boomerang, when fine print fights back. They called me everything from brilliant to dangerous to the new face of founder resilience. But I wasn't chasing titles. I just wanted my company back. And I got it. Not with fury, with foresight. The day I was invited to speak at a tech conference, ironically the same one Jordan once bragged about keynoting, I almost said no. Too tired, too busy, too not interested in clapping rooms. But Carmen said, they need to hear it. And maybe I needed to say it. So I walked on stage, no slides, no script. Just me. I told them the truth about the microwave, the $1 clause. The day I was fired and the moment I smiled because I knew I was already prepared. About building something with love and watching it get turned into a quarterly bullet point by people who never stayed late or skipped meals or poured their rent into a product launch. And then I told them the part no one talks about. The loneliness, the weight of silence after betrayal, the urge to burn it all down versus the patience to wait for the exact moment to strike. And the lesson I left them with: always read the contract. Especially if you're trying to erase the woman who wrote it. The room went still. Then it erupted. Not because I built Pulse, but because I took it back. Back at the office, the framed check still hangs above the door. $1, crumpled slightly. A reminder that power doesn't always roar. Sometimes it waits, quiet, legal, lethal. I'm not angry anymore. I'm focused. Because revenge fades. But rebuilding, that lasts. They say you should never share your best ideas too soon. But when you're the youngest developer on a team that barely remembers your name, sometimes the only way to be seen is to shine a little too brightly. My name is Jessica Tran. I'm 27 years old, and until last month, I was a junior software developer at a mid-sized tech company called Hensley Innovations in San Diego. The kind of place with beanbags in the lobby, kombucha on tap, and a ceiling made of reinforced glass. I didn't come from Stanford or MIT. I came from night classes at a community college, building code between waitressing shifts. I got hired because I was cheap, fast, and didn't ask for much. For the first 6 months, I worked in silence, shipped bug fixes, and kept my ideas in a notebook I never let out of my sight. Until one day, I slipped. It was during a brainstorming meeting. Our team was struggling with a project called VibeLink, an internal experiment aimed at connecting creators with audiences through AI-driven interest mapping. The client was on edge, and our lead dev had just resigned. Our manager, Darren, was panicking. He turned to the room and said, "Anyone got anything?" I hesitated. Then I opened my notebook. I pitched an app interface that would integrate with existing social APIs, learn user habits passively, and serve content creators with tailored audience analytics in real time. I'd been working on it quietly for 6 months on weekends, refining every line. Darren looked up from his laptop for the first time all meeting. That's not bad, he muttered. By the end of the day, he'd asked me to send over my notes. I should have known. What followed was 3 weeks of vague meetings I wasn't invited to. A team of senior devs pulled from other projects. My design sketches disappeared from my desk. Darren barely spoke to me unless it was to ask for a quick clarification. And then came the email. Team, it read, I'm excited to announce that VibeLink has been selected as a finalist for the Future Tech Innovation Award. This project wouldn't exist without the visionary leadership of Darren Klein. Let's celebrate his brilliance. I stared at the screen, unable to blink. My name wasn't mentioned. Not once. At the awards dinner, Darren wore a navy suit and the same smug smile he used when taking credit for someone else's work. When he stood on stage, holding the glass trophy like he'd forged it with his bare hands, he said, Innovation is about listening to the future. And sometimes the best ideas are born when leadership gives them room to grow. I clapped, quietly, with everyone else. After the ceremony, he found me near the exit. You're young, Jess, he said, patting my shoulder like a friendly uncle. You'll get your chance. Someday. I just smiled and said, Of course. But what he didn't know, what no one in that building knew, was that 3 months earlier I'd filed for a provisional patent. Quietly, under my own name, on my own time. I hadn't expected to need it. I was just trying to protect something I'd poured my soul into. But now it was insurance. I didn't go nuclear. Not yet. I went home that night and watched the award speech replay on the company's social feed. It had already racked up over 12,000 views. Clients were reaching out. Tech blogs were writing glowing articles about Darren's vision. And I sat in the dark, laptop open, fingers hovering over a folder labeled Full Documentation, Patent Proof. I wasn't angry. Not in the loud, throwing things kind of way. I was hollow, like a ghost watching someone else live the life I'd built. Then my phone buzzed. It was my best friend Maya, who worked in IP law. Saw the announcement. Is this the one you told me about? The patent app you filed in April? Yes. You know what this means, right? Yeah, I wrote back. I do, because Darren didn't just steal my idea. He'd stolen something that didn't legally belong to him, and that's where the unraveling would begin. It's strange how the smallest moments change everything. The morning after the awards ceremony, I showed up to work at 8:03 a.m., coffee in one hand, badge in the other. Darren walked past me in the hallway, still high off the spotlight. Morning, Jess, he said, without even looking, as if nothing had happened. As if I hadn't watched him stand on a stage and collect praise for the idea I'd sketched on a paper napkin at a diner 6 months earlier. I sat at my desk, opened my laptop, and pulled up the internal product files. I scrolled through the recent edits. The framework, the code structure, the UI sequence, even the AI logic flow. It was all mine. Just rewritten in a different voice. A few variables renamed. A few functions reshaped. But the bones were unmistakable. And yet, in the metadata, the author listed was Darren. Of course, I took a slow breath and plugged in my external drive. Backups of every draft, sketch, and Git commit from my private repository. Date stamped, versioned. I documented it all, not because I expected betrayal, but because I'm the kind of person who always keeps receipts. That morning, Maya called. I talked to a partner at my firm, she said. We have a potential infringement case. Your provisional patent holds weight, especially if the published work bears substantial similarity. I didn't sign anything when I joined, I told her, pacing in the stairwell. No IP clause about side projects. She was quiet for a beat. Jess, you might be holding a grenade. The question is, when do you pull the pin? I didn't answer. Not yet. Instead, I did what I'd always done. I worked. I kept my head down and documented everything. Every change in the codebase. every file that appeared in internal documentation with Darren's name on it. I created a mirrored timeline of development, matching my original proposal against the company's published work. At home, I barely slept. My stomach was a fist of knots, not from fear, from injustice. Because the longer I stayed silent, the more I watched my idea be paraded around like someone else's trophy. The final straw came 2 weeks later, a press release. Hensley Innovations announces strategic partnership with Quantum Collective using groundbreaking tech from VibeLink platform. The contract was rumored to be worth 7 figures. Darren's name was quoted in every article. Visionary, trailblazer, the face of innovation. I read it 3 times, then stared at the ceiling of my studio apartment, blinking back tears. Then I sent the email. Subject, intellectual property dispute. VibeLink framework to legal@hensleyinnovations.com. CC, Maya Patel, legal counsel, myself. Message, I am writing to inform you of a pending intellectual property conflict regarding the core architecture and concept behind the VibeLink platform, which was originally developed, documented, and provisionally patented by me under the USPTO filing number 83723-P. Attached are copies of my original development logs, dated prototypes, and submission confirmations. Please treat this as an official notice of ownership claim and potential infringement. Jessica Tran. It felt surreal, like hitting send on a letter you've written 100 times in your head but never thought you'd actually mail. By noon, my badge access was suspended. HR called within the hour. This is a misunderstanding, they said carefully. We'd like to discuss it internally before you make any formal statements. Too late, because Maya had already looped in a tech publication contact. Not a story, not yet. Just a quiet inquiry. But it was enough to make the wheels start turning. By the next morning, word had leaked. TechChain Weekly ran a headline. Anonymous developer claims patent theft behind award-winning app. Anonymous. For now, but not for long. That afternoon, I got a text from Darren. You've made your point. Let's talk. No lawyers. I didn't respond. Because it was already too late for friendly negotiations. He had underestimated me. Believed his title protected him. That I'd stay silent, grateful for proximity to power. But I didn't want proximity anymore. I wanted credit. I wanted truth. And now I had it. And soon everyone else would too. By Friday morning, everything had changed. What started as a quiet claim had become something louder, messier, real. Maya called me before I'd even had coffee. It's live, she said. What is? Tech Radar picked it up. They ran a follow-up on the anonymous developer claim. But this time, they used your name. I pulled the article up on my phone. There it was. My name in bold. Jessica Tran, former junior developer at Hensley Innovations, alleges her idea was stolen and used without credit. Patent filing dates back over 3 months before the award-winning launch of VibeLink. Underneath that, a screenshot of my original concept sketch, the one I'd drawn during a late-night shift at that all-night diner stained with coffee and dreams. They'd even found the patent filing. My hands were shaking. I should have felt fear. Regret? Something. But instead, I felt steady. Finally. At noon, my inbox exploded. Some emails were supportive. Former coworkers, classmates, even strangers who said things like, "Your courage just gave me mine." Others weren't so kind. Anonymous accounts calling me ungrateful, attention-seeking, jealous. But the worst one came from Darren. Subject? You're ruining everything. I don't know what kind of stunt you're pulling, Jess. But it's not too late to stop. Take it down, walk away quietly, and we can figure something out. I can talk to the board. This doesn't have to get uglier than it already is. He still thought this was a negotiation. Still thought I wanted a seat at a table that had already burned me. I didn't reply. Instead, Maya and I set a meeting with her firm's IP litigation team. They were interested. Very interested. Because it wasn't just about me anymore. It was about setting a precedent. a message to companies that ideas aren't free just because they come from someone without a title. That weekend, I left the city. I drove up to my aunt's cabin in Big Bear Lake. No cell reception, no Wi-Fi, just time. I sat by the fire and tried to remember what life had felt like before the betrayal. Before I'd watched someone else wear my work like a tailored suit. Before I'd learned how easily people rewrite history if you don't speak up. When I got back on Monday morning, I had 92 unread emails. The first was from Hensley Innovations' legal team. We have received your complaint and are conducting an internal review. In the meantime, we request that you refrain from making any additional public statements until the matter is resolved. The second was from a journalist at Founders Digest. We'd like to profile your story, not just the legal battle, but your voice, the creator behind the idea. Are you open to an interview? Maya advised caution. If this goes to trial, every word will be scrutinized. But I was done hiding. I agreed. The interview was honest, emotional. I didn't attack anyone. I didn't throw accusations. I just told the truth. How I'd worked on VibeLink long before Hensley ever knew it existed. How I'd trusted someone who saw me as a tool, not a creator. How I'd filed the patent quietly, not out of arrogance, but out of self-preservation. And most importantly, how women in tech are often told to be grateful, to wait their turn, to not make noise. But sometimes, noise is the only language power understands. 2 days later, the article dropped. Not just a seat at the table, how Jessica Tran fought back against IP theft in tech. It went viral in under 24 hours, LinkedIn, Twitter, Reddit, everywhere. And then the thing no one expected happened. An email from Quantum Collective, the partner named in the press release, the company who had just signed the 7-figure deal. Subject: urgent, VibeLink partnership review. Jessica, I read your story. I've also reviewed your patent filing. I want you to know, we were never made aware of this situation. We're pausing the deal with Hensley immediately while we conduct our own due diligence. If your claims are valid, and frankly they appear to be, we won't move forward. Sincerely, Grant Murdoch, President, Quantum Collective. I read it 3 times. Then I forwarded it to Maya. Her reply came in all caps. They're bleeding. The truth wasn't just out there. It was working. And Hensley was finally starting to feel the consequences. But this was only the beginning. The real storm hadn't even started yet. 3 days after the Quantum Collective deal was paused, the silence from Hensley became deafening. No press statement. No denial. Just nothing. Except internally, something was boiling. I knew it. Because on Thursday morning, I got a LinkedIn message from someone I hadn't spoken to in months. Alex Rowe, a senior software engineer at Hensley, and someone who had once helped me debug a broken UI element after everyone else left for drinks. Jess, I don't know if this helps, but I've seen your name removed from commit logs before. I didn't say anything then because I didn't want to get involved. But what they did to you? That wasn't just unethical. It was intentional. If you need someone to back you up, I'm here. I stared at the screen. My stomach twisted. Not with surprise, but confirmation. What I'd suspected all along was true. This wasn't just Darren going rogue. It was systemic. Maya and her team took that message and folded it into the case file, along with the Git history, the UI sketches, the emails, the version control timelines. We had built a wall of receipts, tall, solid, and irrefutable. The next day, it cracked wide open. Someone leaked internal emails to the press. Real emails, screenshots. One was from Darren to the CTO. We should scrub early devlogs. Can't afford a trail right now. Another read. If Tran pushes this, we'll call it a team collaboration. Who's going to believe a junior anyway? I read those words again and again, like I was trying to force them into something less disgusting. But there it was, in writing. Erasure. Documented. It wasn't just me anymore. It was every junior employee who had ever had their ideas harvested and dismissed. Every "you'll get your turn" whispered over stolen brilliance. That night, a new hashtag started trending. Credit the creator. By the weekend, 3 more people from Hensley had reached out, 2 from marketing, 1 from HR, all with the same message. We saw it too. We were told to stay quiet. Maya called me that Sunday afternoon. Her voice was clipped, energized. They're scared. They should be. She paused. They're offering a settlement. I stopped mid-step in my apartment. Already? They want to resolve this quietly. Financial compensation, a confidentiality clause, and a formal retraction from you. I almost laughed. They wanted my silence more than they wanted justice. How much? I asked. Not because I cared about the number, but because I wanted to know how little they thought the truth was worth. 7 figures, she said. It's generous, but it comes with a muzzle. I finished. Exactly. I didn't need to think. I'd already made the decision weeks ago, sitting in the dark after the award ceremony. When they took my idea, they took something personal. But when they tried to erase me completely, they declared war. No, I said. We take it to court. Maya didn't flinch. Then we go public with the full documentation next week and file the formal suit by Friday. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. My heart beat like a war drum, but my voice stayed calm. Let's do it. That night, I pulled up my old prototype. The original code. It still ran. Simple, rough around the edges, but fully functional. My fingerprint was everywhere, from the data flow to the risk analysis logic. I stared at it for a long time. Then I added a title screen, created by Jessica Tran. Nothing flashy, just true. By Monday, the story hit Wired. Startup giant faces legal battle over stolen IP. Junior developer files lawsuit with receipts. Attached were snippets of the leaked emails, side-by-side code comparisons, and a quote from me. This isn't just about one app. It's about every unseen hand that makes innovation possible. And it's time those hands were named. Suddenly, people started listening. My inbox filled with interviews, podcast requests, messages from developers across the world, many of them women, first-gen grads, or immigrants like me. I didn't think I could speak up until I saw you did. Your story is my story. Different company, same theft. We see you, we're behind you. And for the first time, I didn't feel alone. Hensley tried to issue a statement. It was hollow, full of vague phrases like unintended oversight, respect for innovation, and moving forward with transparency. But it was too late for damage control, because now it was in the hands of the court. And more importantly, of the public. Darren had stolen my work, but now I was taking back my name. Not for revenge, for recognition, and for everyone who'd ever been told they were just lucky to be in the room. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. No dramatic wood-paneled ceilings, no echoing chambers, just pale walls, quiet tension, and a judge who barely looked up as we began. It had been nearly 8 months since I'd sent that first email. Since Darren stood on stage holding a trophy he didn't earn. Since I'd smiled through gritted teeth while being erased in real time. Now, everything was in the open. Emails, Git logs, test versions, witness statements, internal memos, the original prototype, the patent filing date, the interview clips, the screenshots. Every piece of it meticulously laid out by Maya and her team like chess moves leading to an inevitable checkmate. And yet, Hensley still tried to fight. They framed it as collaborative development, claimed my idea emerged organically through team discussions, claimed I had agreed to contribute without expecting recognition. And Darren, sitting there in his expensive tailored suit, still looked like he believed he could talk his way out of it. He took the stand on day 3. He called me a promising young talent. He smiled, softened his voice, leaned into the performative humility. I always believed in Jessica, he said. I just think there was a misunderstanding. She was part of a team. Innovation doesn't belong to one person. And that's when Maya stood. Permission to introduce Exhibit 42? It was a video clip. Internal screen recording from Hensley's Slack workspace. A message from Darren. She's not ready for credit. Let's be strategic. Keep her name off the press materials, at least until after we lock the funding. The silence that followed was thunderous. The judge looked up for the first time. "We'll resume tomorrow," he said, and banged the gavel. Outside the courtroom, reporters gathered. I kept my sunglasses on and said nothing. Maya answered all the questions. She was the composed one, the shield. I was the story, but she made sure I never became the spectacle. The verdict came 2 weeks later, ruling in favor of the plaintiff, Jessica Tran. The judgment included damages, legal fees, and most importantly, a formal order of correction for authorship and ownership of the VibeLink platform, including the public retraction of Darren's award and recognition of me as the original inventor. I didn't cry. I thought I would. But the moment the ruling was read, I just breathed. For the first time in almost a year, I let my shoulders drop. It was over, but also just beginning. The fallout was swift. Hensley's stock dropped 18% in 3 days. Their upcoming product launch was canceled. Darren was placed on indefinite administrative leave, which became permanent 2 weeks later. The board issued a groveling statement full of promises about ethics reviews and updated internal culture protocols. It wasn't enough to fix what they broke, but it was a start. Meanwhile, the tech world kept talking. Podcasts, panels, roundtables. Jessica Tran became a name people knew, not because I was flashy, but because I had dared to speak while others whispered. I got calls from investors, from incubators, from 3 different universities asking me to guest lecture on innovation ethics. But the message that meant the most came in the form of a handwritten note delivered to Maya's office. No return address, just a single line. "Thank you for showing us we're allowed to fight back." I taped it to the wall above my desk. 6 months later, I launched my own firm, Signal North, a startup consultancy focused on ethical innovation, diverse teams, and intellectual property protection. We don't just build tech. We build futures no one gets to steal. Some of my former coworkers joined. Others sent their resumes quietly. And every time we reviewed a new pitch, I asked one question. Who really made this? Because I never wanted anyone else to sit where I had. Silenced. Overlooked. Watching someone else collect the reward for their labor. The award Darren accepted? It was retracted publicly. And while he tried to return to the spotlight through a podcast, rebranding, no one was listening anymore. You can only steal brilliance for so long before people stop believing you ever had any. Last week, I took the stage at a national tech conference, the same one that once applauded Darren's name. Only this time, the spotlight was on me. I looked out at the crowd. Young developers, founders, engineers, mostly women, mostly people who had been told they were too junior or not leadership material. And I said this. They called me lucky to be in the room. But luck didn't write that code. Luck didn't design that system. I did. And I almost walked away because I thought no one would believe me. But silence is not a requirement for success. You don't have to disappear to move forward. You can speak. You can fight. And you can win. Afterward, a girl, maybe 19, barely old enough to vote, came up to me with a tear in her eye. "I'm studying computer science," she said. And every professor says the same thing. Get used to people taking credit. That's just how it works. I smiled. It's how it used to work.